This is John Groves coming to you from my home studio. For a number of weeks now in our Bible talks, I've been discussing numerous topics concerning our story of David and Goliath, simply one of the most popular and well-known stories from the Bible. Sadly, though, their single combat did not resolve the ongoing war between the Philistines and the Israelites. Later, after David becomes king of the Israelites, he becomes enmeshed in wars with nearly all of Israel's surrounding neighbors, including the Philistines. Today, I want to explore what the Bible says about war. I consider this a subject on many people's minds. And I have divided the subject roughly into 3 parts, which I plan to cover in successive Bible talks. In today's talk, I want to explore what the Hebrew Bible or the Old Testament says on the subject. The next session will be devoted to the words and acts of Jesus as they touch on the subject of war. And essentially, we'll be exploring whether Jesus was a pacifist. And the third talk, if all goes according to plan, will be focused on the early church's teachings on war, and specifically the vision of Armageddon in the book of Revelation. Along the way, we will also be exploring what Charles Fillmore, as a co-founder of Unity, had occasion to share on the subject. The Hebrew Bible, in my estimation, does not supply a clear outlook or commentary on wars. In the book of Ecclesiastes, chapter 3, verse 8, we read, "There is a time for war and a time for peace." There's no judgment implicit in this pronouncement, and no discussion of war's origins or how best to respond to actual or threatened wars. Part of the cultural legacy of the ancient Israelites is their vision of how the Lord led them through their battles with the local inhabitants as they took possession of the promised land. In numerous instances, they simply exterminated them because they thought of them as immoral and unfit to occupy the land, and thus, in a way, eliminating a threat to their religious values and way of life. In time, the Israelite people were exposed to moderating currents of thought that spoke of alternatives to war. In Psalm 46, for example, we read, "Come, behold the works of the Lord. He makes wars to cease to the end of the earth. He breaks the bow and shatters the spear. He burns the shields with fire." There's also the famous image of the instruments of war being transformed into agricultural implements, as noted by the prophets Isaiah in chapter 2, verse 4, and Micah in chapter 4, verse 3. The first of these 2 texts reads, "The peoples shall beat their swords into plowshares and their spears into pruning hooks. Nation shall not lift up sword against nation, neither shall they learn war anymore." But against this vision of a more perfect future, we find in the prophet Joel, in chapter 3, verse 10, the very opposite image. That text reads in part, "Prepare war, stir up the warriors. Let all the soldiers draw near, let them come up. Beat your plowshares into swords and your pruning hooks into spears. Let the weakling say, 'I am a warrior.'" Perhaps the best we can do here is surmise that wars will be present among us until such time and times as they finally cease. And what will lead to their cessation? There's no unanimity of opinion on this point. But the destruction of the implements of war and disarmament generally in themselves may manifest a commitment to live peaceably. This overview is by no means covering all the references to the subject of war in the Hebrew Bible, but it does offer a suitable background for what we'll be exploring in our next talks. This is John Groves signing off until next time.